Welcome to Garden Wise Adventures. My name is Malie. Today is the first Saturday in January. I live in Utah Zone 6/7, and the last video I did was just a few minutes ago for me, but a few days ago for you, was a recap on the 2024 blooms and texture and all the beauty that I had in my water-wise landscape. But now I want to do a video on how I provided all the fruits other than oranges that I eat in a year. It's middle of January. I still have a ton of fruit in my freezer. I have a ton of fruit that I dehydrated, and I have jams and jellies and all sorts of things that I can use so that I don't have to purchase fruits anymore. I do this on a 1/4 acre. I'm a single person. I do most of the maintenance on my own, and I would love to show you what I've grown that gives you season-long fruit to eat. So let's start in my front yard. So we're going to start here in my front yard, and I think we'll try and go systematically through it so I don't forget anything. But I have a lot of different fruits and vegetables that I grow so that I can provide myself a lot of food throughout the year, and because it's fun. Now later on in the year, I am going to do some videos on why I love to garden and why I think you should be gardening. And then we're also going to go through videos on how to make it more manageable and more accessible to people who have a little less money and a little less time. So first thing that I want to show you here, now this, mind you, this is January. We're in a very cold climate. Right here we have some figs. We also have an elderberry. My elderberry is new. It has not fruited yet. Well, I take that back. Last year we had just a couple of fruits, not enough to harvest. You can see the remnants of the fruit that I didn't harvest right there. But elderberry is an excellent one to grow in cooler climates. I live in Utah Zone 6/7, and in drier climates. Now another one that is not grown as much in Utah because it does take a little bit more work are figs. So this one right here is a Chicago Hardy. Now this is an experiment. Here in Utah we can get down below 0 degrees. Most winters we hit single digits, and anything below 20 degrees is enough to kill back the branches. Now we've hit 18 degrees, but this is on the south side of my property, and so far I'm not seeing any dieback. But this is an extremely unusual winter because by this time we've usually hit in the teens, the low teens. But this is a very warm winter and I'm not seeing any dieback. Normally I cover my figs just like I do this one, and I'm going to have to put the name of this one on the screen because it is so cold right now. My hands are so cold that I am drawing a blank on the name, but this one is not a hardy fig. But the Chicago Hardy is one of our hardier figs. But still, if we hit below 20 degrees, or even in like the upper teens, you're going to start seeing branch die back. If it gets below, like I'd say 10 degrees, which we do most years, it will die back to the ground. If it dies back to the ground though, it will come back from the roots. Now the reason I like covering my figs and not just allowing them to die to the ground is if you let them die to the ground, you have to wait the entire spring season. You know, if you have a late spring, sometimes it doesn't appear and start growing until late May, early June. But then you have to wait the entire season for them to grow, start forming figs, and any figs here in Utah that form after July don't normally have time to ripen. So whether or not you get figs to ripen if you let it die to the ground is, just a toss-up. You've got to take that risk. So I usually like covering them, but this year I decided to see, this is a mature fig, it's 5 years old. I decided to see what would happen if I left it uncovered and if I actually get ripe figs next year off of it. Now this one I covered early in the season. I usually start covering my figs in October, and then I start uncovering them in May and fully uncover them in June because we can get some really late spring freezes that will completely kill back any new growth. And by doing so, I've actually been able to get Breba figs, which is the earlier figs formed on old wood, which ripen early in the season, like in June and July. And then I get a good crop of Maine figs, which ripen in September and October. So if you want to grow figs in Utah in colder climates, you do have to think about your priorities and decide whether or not it's worth the effort of covering them up to get the early figs. So we're just going to see what happens with this. So I have figs and elderberries. Now another plant that has not borne any nuts for me yet is this hardy pistachio. This is not one I'm going to cover in great detail because it's not one that is normally grown in Utah. There are only a few hardy pistachio trees that I know of here in Utah, and this is just an experiment. But this is a 5-year-old tree. Actually, I think it's a 5-year-old tree, and it's grown beautifully. And within the next 2 or 3 years, we'll be able to see if we can get some nuts off of it. And here in my front yard, I have several other edible fruit trees and nut trees. So the one in the middle there is another one that probably most people haven't heard about. This is called a medlar. Medlars are an amazing tree. They're normally grown in England, but they seem to be really easy to grow here in Utah. This one is almost maintenance free. I do prune it once a year, harvest it once a year. Other than that, I don't fertilize it. It seems to be able to deal with a lot of water, but I'll link a video up above that explains more about medlars and what I do with them. This is another nut tree. This is a 3-year-old almond. This one is a bounty almond. We got 2 nuts off of it last year in its 2nd year. And we've already got buds on it because it's been so warm. So it looks like we already had 1 flower this fall because there were nuts on there. But almonds seem to be really easy to grow here as long as you put them in a protected area. Buy the hardy almond varieties and also buy the late flowering ones. If you do that, then you can have a greater chance of getting a harvest because almonds are susceptible to the late spring freezes. So this one did produce fruit for me last year, and we will see how it does next year. They do need pollinators. So this little tiny almond over here, right by the pole holding up my medlar, is a Nikita's Pride almond. This is another tree that is not normally grown here in Utah. This is a pawpaw. It's a Davis pawpaw. This one was planted in 2008 or 9. I can't really remember exactly. And growing pawpaws here in Utah has been a learning experience. They need a lot of water. When I removed the lawn here and cut off the water, we started seeing dieback on this tree. They seem to grow really well in lawns here, and they do need a bit of protection in the summer because we have hot drying winds and a lot of really high elevation sunshine that they don't seem to tolerate very well. So pawpaws are another one that you can grow, and I have harvested fruit off this one for the last 10 years. And even though they're supposedly not self-pollinating, this one has been partially self-fruitful, and we get about 10 fruit off it a year. And I'm hoping to change that because I finally have another one that survived. This one should start doing just fine now, as long as I keep enough water on it. This is a sunflower pawpaw, and you can see all of the little flower buds on it that are going to help pollinate my Davis pawpaw over here. Now I'm going to try yet again. I have tried in this area for years to get another pawpaw to grow. I have a mango pawpaw purchased, and we're going to see if we can get that one to grow here. Now another one that is rare for northern Utah are the hardy pomegranates, and I think more people should try them. Hardy pomegranates do need to be protected, and I have done that with burlap for the first 3 years of their life. This one is 4 years old. And it seems like it's going to be doing just fine now. They produce on old wood, I think 2-year-old wood, so that's why you need to protect them the first couple of years. After that, from what I've heard, they can be quite hardy, even though they may die back a little bit in the winter. But I got a few little tiny pomegranates on it last year. This is its 3rd year, and they were delicious. So this one's a Slavatsky, and then we'll show you the Kazake that I have in the back. Another nut tree that I have is hazelnuts. Now hazelnuts grow exceptionally well here in Utah. This one right here is a Doris hazelnut. They are beautiful trees, and they produce really great nuts. They're easy to care for, extremely drought tolerant. The only thing that you have to do is decide if you want to allow them to be a multi-trunk tree or a single trunk tree. Because the suckers down from the bottom there, this is 1-year growth on those suckers. Now, I haven't quite yet decided if I'm going to allow it to grow in a shrub form or a tree form, but we'll decide that in the spring when we do the pruning on it. This over here is a Jefferson hazelnut. That's the pollinator for the Doris. Another great fruiting shrub that you can have in Utah are bush cherries. This is a Juliet bush cherry. It does need a pollinator to have a lot of fruit, so I do have one over here, which is a tiny one, which is a Carmine Jewel right there behind the grass. Now, bush cherries are pretty drought tolerant. They're absolutely gorgeous. They have gorgeous fall color, beautiful early spring blooms, and amazing fruit. It is a little bit tart, but it makes an exceptional jelly. Another one that I have that is still new, these are 3-year-old plants, and I think this year, this coming spring, will be the spring where I finally get a decent harvest of them. These are honeyberries. We've got a Borealis honeyberry right here, and we've got an Aurora over here. Now I have 6 different varieties. We'll show you the other ones when we get in the backyard. But as long as honeyberries get early morning sun, late afternoon shade, and a little bit more water than the other plants that I have here, they do quite well. Now when I say more water, I make sure that these get watered deeply once a week. And as I said, the rest of this area gets watered once every 2 weeks. So what I do is almost everything is watered by drip line here, but I'll come through once a week by hand and water the plants that need it. Now another plant that I grow for its ornamental value as well as its edible value are strawberries. Now the kids in my neighborhood love strawberries, so I grow them here along the sidewalk for them. Also, all the water drains down in this area, and it makes it easy to hand water them because they do need water 3 times a week, while the rest of it gets only watered once every week to 2 weeks. Now, they're not truly water-wise, but they are amazing. They give you great fall color and wonderful berries. This fig right here that's all covered up is a brown turkey fig. It's been one of my better producing figs. Now the front yard I try to keep extremely ornamental, and I also keep the backyard ornamental, but I keep it ornamental with edible plants. So most of what you see back here has some edible value. We've got strawberries in the understory that I just allow to spread. We've got several really tiny little honeyberries. These are new ones. This one right here is a honey glen. Then we have a Borealis beast. And over here, it's hard to see in all the leaf litter, but that's a Borealis blizzard. So honeyberries are great. My last variety of honeyberry is the blue banana, and this one is exceptional. We had a lot of fruit off this one last year, and it was really tasty. We also grow blackberries. These are triple crown blackberries. Very, very productive and very tasty. They should have been pruned a few months ago, but I'll just prune them a little bit later this year. We have an Asian pear. I use the grow a little fruit tree method, also the Dave Wilson backyard orcharding method to grow my fruit trees, which means I purchase full-size trees and then prune them to keep them small. This is a standard tree, and I'm pruning it to keep it about 5 or 6 feet tall. I've also been doing that with these pluots. These are my 2 pluots. I have a Flavor King and a Flavor Supreme. They're 4 years old, and we got our first fruit off of them last year. And I'm really excited to see how much fruit we get this year. So these are planted close together in the Dave Wilson backyard orcharding method and kept small in the grow a little fruit tree method, which originated with the Dave Wilson backyard orcharding methods. This right here is a non-hardy pomegranate. I'm seeing how many years I can keep it alive and see if I can actually get fruit off it by covering it every year. But this is a Parfianca pomegranate. It's a soft-seeded pomegranate, supposedly excellent tasting. It's been too young to fruit so far, but we'll see how it goes. We've got 5 more figs here that I've covered up. We have an Olympian fig. This is its 2nd year. Did not fruit last year because it was too young. We have an Italian honey or Latarula fig right there. That one fruited last year, and that was my favorite fig. I absolutely loved it. This is a Ronde Bordeaux. It's 4 years old. It's the oldest fig in the backyard, and it's produced really well in the past. Sometimes I do have issues with getting it to ripen, but it is a really, really tasty fig once it starts ripening. Back here, this wide one is a Negrone, which is also Violette de Bordeaux. Very delicious. We got a lot of really good Breba figs or early figs off of it last year. This is a Marseilles Black VS. Also a really delicious fig. It's 2 years old. This will be its 3rd year, and we got the first figs off it last year, and they were delicious. This right here is a Kazake pomegranate. We got pomegranates off it last year, and they were absolutely delicious. Another rare one are the hybrid persimmons. This one right here is a Cassandra hybrid persimmon, and I'm hoping to get some fruit off of it this year. This is only 3 years old, and it was actually grafted from a friend. You can see the graft union right down there. And it got a lot of good growth off it last year. It's really healthy, and I'm excited to see what kind of fruit we get off of it. Another one is the Ichikekai Jiro persimmon. This one may need to be replaced. It had a really difficult time last year. I'm thinking there might be root issues, and I'm thinking it might need to be replaced, but the top still has growth on it. So we're just going to give it one more year and see how it does. Another fruiting shrub is the gomi berry. There are a few people growing gomi berries here in Utah. I think we need to see more of them grown. I've seen full-grown gomi berries that are producing. Mine are still young and have not produced yet. This is the sweet scarlet right here, and this is the red gem. This little tiny guy is an excitement for me. This is a new one. This is one that a friend of mine grafted. This is a dwarf mulberry. It's only supposed to get about 8 feet tall and produce prolifically, and it's supposed to produce commercial grade fruit. So it's supposed to be really delicious. It's really tiny, was just planted this last fall. I'm hoping it does really well. We'll see how it does. Still got life in it, so I'm excited. We have 5 varieties of grapes. If you grow the right variety of grapes, they grow beautifully. You need the more cold hardy varieties. And there's quite a few of them. We have Concord and Swenson Red, Cannabis. The one on the top there is Jupiter. One down here is Himrod. And there's so many more varieties that grow really well here in Utah. And if you choose them correctly, I start getting my first grapes in June or July, just depending on how warm the spring is, starting there. And then the last ones to harvest are late October, which are my Concord. So you can get a long season of harvest. Some of them I use for juice, and some of them I make for raisins, and all of them I use for fresh eating. We have an ever-bearing raspberry that produced really beautifully last year. You do need to be careful where you set your raspberries. They seem to do a little bit better if they can get a little protection from the afternoon sun. Other great ones for Utah are peaches and nectarines. Now, they're not as cold hardy as some of the fruits, so you can't grow them any colder than zone 4. I think zone 4 is a little too cold for them. But if you're zones 5, which you still have to be a little careful, 6 and 7, they grow beautifully. The one issue they have, and I'm just going to see if I have that issue right now, and I do, is peach tree borer. That little frass down there and down there is showing me that I have borers on this tree right here. Now, these trees are 15 years old. Normally, you get about 8 years off peach to nectarine trees here because of the borer issue. But these are still growing. They're still giving me a lot of new growth and a ton of fruit, so we're just going to keep waiting until they tell me I have to remove them. Cherry trees grow beautifully here in Utah. This is a Stella cherry. It gives me pounds and pounds and pounds of fruit. Delicious fruit. Gorgeous fall color. Beautiful blooms in the spring. I absolutely love cherry trees. This one I've pruned so that my kids could climb, but they moved out before it was big enough to climb. Another one that does pretty well in Utah, and you've got to watch the weather, especially the early spring weather, are the plums. This one back here is a Santa Rosa plum, and if we don't get the late spring freezes, I get a ton of fruit. If we get the late spring freezes, then sometimes I don't get any fruit. But what I do get is absolutely worth it. This right here is another hardy pistachio tree. This is an experiment. I put this on my hillside with less water, no fertility, and a lot of neglect just to see how well it grows. Because the parent plants that these came from, that my pistachio trees came from, are on a rocky hillside in Logan, Utah, where it's extremely cold, a lot colder than here, and they had a lot more neglect than I'm even giving this one. And they've survived since the 1970s. So this is my experiment. The one in the front that's large gets a lot of care and a lot of water. This one gets little care and little water. You can see the difference. And then we've got my apple trees. I've got columnar apples here. We've got a Scarlet Sentinel and a North Pole that produced apples last year, and they're absolutely delicious. Apples do really, really well here in Utah, and they can survive on a lot of neglect. Now, when I say neglect, you do need to make sure and go in and prune them properly, but even if you don't prune them, sometimes you'll find them on old properties still producing. But it's better to prune them, and mine looks like it needs some good pruning this next year. These are also grown in the Dave Wilson backyard orcharding method. We've got 3 trees in one hole. We've got a Fuji, September Wonder Fuji on this side, a Jonah Gold on the other, and then in the front, this is not an apple, this is a Bartlett pear. This pear produces a ton of really, really delicious fruit. One of my favorite fruits, I think. So pear trees grow really well. You've just got to be careful on the pruning, and then also on the apples and pears, you've got to be careful for fire blight. Fire blight is an issue here in Utah, but practice good maintenance, watch carefully for the fire blight, and plant resistant varieties, and they seem to do a lot better. Here against the back side of my house, I have some other excellent fruit. These actually extend my fruit season. These are service berries, which are some of my earliest producers, along with the strawberries and raspberries. This is a Regent service berry, as is this one. They're Utah natives, and they give you delicious, delicious fruit. I usually get bags and bags and bags of it, so much that I can't use it all, and so I share it with friends, and then they can't use it all, but the birds also seem to love them. They give gorgeous spring color and early fall flowers. Beautiful, beautiful plants. I suggest everybody in Utah have service berries. They come as bushes and as trees. The one in the middle is another rare one for Utah, but thankfully is becoming more popular. This is a Jujube. Jujubes extend my harvest clear into October. So these are some of my later ones. The ones that are after that are the Persimmons. So I'm hoping to start getting more and more Persimmons to form on my trees. Then I can extend that harvest into November. My medlar in the front I harvest in December. So I start harvesting usually, early May with, also honeyberries are really early, but early May with the service berries and strawberries, raspberries, honeyberries. And then the latest one is my medlar, which is in December. So that's a very long season in cold climates for harvesting fruit. But jujubes, I'll link a video up above on growing jujubes and what it takes to grow them here in Utah, because I think more people in cooler climates need to grow jujubes. Now, I think they're only hardy to zone 6, but this jujube has seen zone 5 winter where it got to -10 and it didn't even skip a beat, no dieback at all. They can take the heat of Nevada, they can take the cold down to at least zone 6, possibly even zone 5 if you put them in a good microclimate. They leaf out really, really late, like in June, and so they miss all the late frosts. They're just excellent, excellent trees. I absolutely love them, and they're gorgeous. Another one that's rarer in Utah are my medlars. Medlars are in the passion fruit family. This is Passiflora incarnata. The tropical passion fruit, the lily koi, is Passiflora edulis. Now this is hardy, I think down to zone 6. These also don't start growing. I don't see any growth on them till late June, early July. By the time it hits early September, they've grown almost as tall as my roof and then flop over my service berry. And the fruit is not as good as the Passiflora edulis, but it is still good. The flowers and the leaves are also edible and medicinal, so it's a very useful plant. I absolutely love maypops here in Utah. Another berry that I have are gooseberries. This one I don't know the name of. It was supposed to be an Invictus gooseberry, but it turned out to be a pink gooseberry. So it's not Invictus. It is very sweet and quite tasty, so this is a good gooseberry. This is an Invictus gooseberry. They're green. They are really delicious and a large gooseberry. I had one previously in this area, but neglected it and it died. So this is the replacement, and it's 3 years old and should start fruiting this year. Currants are another one that are excellent for Utah. I have a Primus White right here and a Champagne Pink, or Pink Champagne currant. The Pink Champagne produced prolifically last year and made some excellent jelly. The Primus White did produce, but it's a newer plant. This one was only 2 years old, and the fruit I found not very good. So I'm giving it another year just to see if maturity helps the flavor. And we'll see if we like it. If we don't like it, then we'll replace it with something else. We did have a golden currant here that I dug out and gave to a friend because it was too big for the area. It just got big and floppy, and I think it needed a little bit more sun. This is the north side of my property. It gets very little sun, stays quite cold, and I think that just wasn't exactly what that currant needed. So that one's gone. I'm going to be replacing it with a crandall currant, which I think can take a little bit more shade. This last plant right here is my jostaberry. Now, jostaberries are a combination between currants and gooseberries, and I found them extremely tasty. It's its 4th year. Last year was the first year it fruited, and I absolutely loved it. So jostaberries are another good one for Utah. So that is a quick primer on what I grow here in Utah so that I can have fruit most of the year and provide almost all the fruit that I like to eat. Like I said, the only thing that I don't provide for myself is citrus. I did grow citrus indoors, but one of my videos that I'm really embarrassed to show you, that I'm going to show you anyway a little bit later this month, is the plants that I've been growing indoors. I did grow citrus indoors. They are all dead now because I haven't been in my grow room for about 4 months. Nothing's been watered, nothing's been touched. It's just been a really busy year, and I had to do priorities, and the grow room was on the bottom of the list. So we're going to show you the revamp of my grow room. I don't know if I'm going to try citrus again, but that would have rounded out everything that I consume as fruit. So I would love to hear what you grow on your property. If you're able to produce enough fruit for yourself to eat fruit for the full year, what are your earliest harvests and what are your latest harvests? So hopefully this video has been helpful for you. If it has been helpful, I hope you like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and go have a wonderful garden adventure.